I'd rather see my children dead than return them to slavery. On a freezing January morning in 1856, U.S. Marshals burst into a small cabin near Cincinnati. Inside, they found Margaret Garner, a 22-year-old mother who has escaped slavery with her family, holding a butcher knife. One of her children was dead. She had tried to kill all 4 of them. This article, published in the Cincinnati Gazette, shows the description of the incident. In February '56, indictment papers charged Margaret Garner with murder in Ohio, but the case was never tried. Federal authorities instead reclaimed her under the Fugitive Slave Act. Many newspapers described her actions as unnatural, but abolitionists argued they were the most human act imaginable. A mother trying to protect her children from a system worse than death. The transcription of Garner's rendition quotes Margaret's own words: "I was as cool as I now am. I would much rather kill them at once and thus end their sufferings than have them taken back to slavery and be murdered by piecemeal." Margaret Garner's tragic story was so powerful that it later became the inspiration for Toni Morrison's novel, Beloved. Margaret's choice wasn't an outlier. It exposed the rules of a world where law named mothers property. To understand how that law worked inside everyday homes, return south and look closely at what motherhood meant under slavery. In the quiet rooms of San Antonio's grand houses, the first cry of a white child often meant the forced silence of a black one. Enslaved mothers, women who had just given birth, were taken from their infants to feed the babies of their enslavers. Their own children were left hungry while their milk, their bodies, were claimed as property. This was called wet nursing. In Bear Counter records from the 19th century, these women are listed simply as ama de leche, wet nurse. Their names rarely appear, only their age, their price, and the fact that they could feed another woman's child. In the words of a woman interviewed in Texas decades later, white women wouldn't nurse their own babies because it would make their breasts fall. She would nurse her baby and the white baby too. They would feed her everything she wanted. She didn't have to work because milk would be hot to give to babies. Others remembered their mothers being called in from the fields to nurse a white infant, while they would forbid to nurse their own babies, and some women would do it secretly. In the words of Fanny Clemens, she said her old miss wouldn't let her come to the house to nurse me, so she would slip up under a house and crawl through a hole in the floor. She took and pulled a plank up so she could slip through. Wet nursing wasn't kindness, it was a system of control, a way to profit from black women's fertility, to make their milk nourish the oppressor's children while starving their own. This practice built intimate, violent bonds between enslaved women and white families, bonds that erased their motherhood in favor of someone else's lineage. The story of one woman, Clarissa, shows this reality. In October 1848, a bill of sale record shows Clarissa being sold with her daughters Emily, Betsy, and an unnamed infant. 5 years later, another sale lists Clarissa with a 6-year-old girl named Caroline and a 3-year-old boy named Erwin. They were stated to be Clarissa's children. They're being described as having light hair and light eyes. This could be a sign of them being the children of Clarissa and one of their white enslavers. Emily and Betsy completely vanished from the record. No names, no trace, no explanation. They were most likely sold to another buyer or died before adulthood. Imagine loving a child you could not protect. Imagine raising them knowing they might be sold, raped, or used to breed more laborers. We cannot undo their pain, but we can refuse to forget them. Mothers like Clarissa, whose children vanished from the record, telling their stories completes the history.